Colborne Lodge was built in 1836 by John Howard, who was Toronto's first architect. The house was named after a patron, which was a way of showing that he was associated with someone famous. Colborne Lodge is a house that is situated in High Park. The location was called High Park because it is on high ground, close to the lake, with easy access to transportation. The house is originally a single-story building that added a second floor and a porch in 1843. The house is picturesque, with white stucco and perfect symmetry. The architect wanted to emphasize the natural beauty of the house by accenting the vertical elements of the forest around.
Colborne Lodge housed two different kitchens, which were worked by the servants. The winter kitchen was located in the basement, and the summer kitchen was added later with the glass house on the first floor. The summer kitchen was in the non-insulated part in the back of the house, allowing for ventilation. In addition, it provided easy access to the garden. This kitchen had a coal stove, which had little windows allowing light into space when the stove was used. The stove was also used to heat the space. The kitchen also had a dry sink to hold buckets of water, which was reusable for washing dishes. There were three main ways to cook in the winter kitchen. One way consisted of hanging meat on a rotating spit. The second way was pulling out coals from the main fire under individual pot stands for slower cooking. The third way consisted of using a stone oven that housed a fire to cook the food, similar to a pizza oven.
They revolved their meals around a recipe book that consisted of a recipe for every meal for every day. They had 3 meals a day and ate based on what was available seasonally. The food they ate was similar to British households and included parts of the animal such as liver and brain. The servants shopped daily and food was only stored for a short term. The food that was seasonal was preserved in order to have it available later. The most popular food that they consumed was scones and cakes during tea time. In the 1800s, seasons were difficult to work around. People tended to eat what was available to them, and those foods that weren't were preserved in jars known as canning throughout the seasons. 2 different kitchens were available to the servants, depending on the appropriate season. During the summer, a kitchen attached to the exterior of the house was used as it kept cool with little insulation. During winter periods, the kitchen in the basement was used for extra warmth and a wood-burning fireplace. The kitchen in the basement helped with heat as the fireplace allowed the heat to rise throughout the house. For further heat distribution, a central wood-burning fireplace was located in the living room, which was centrally controlled. Furniture was moved around depending on the appropriate weather. During the summer, furniture was moved away from the windows to allow the French doors to be opened, whereas the winter months consisted of furniture being placed directly in front of the doors to block drafts from entering. In the bedrooms, the beds were raised high off the ground to prevent being situated in a draft. The hottest part of the room was towards the ceiling, and it was their intention to stay as close to the heat as possible during the winter. This also helped during the summer to allow the highest amount of air circulation throughout the room. Clothing was layered for maximum warmth as the energy was limited and very expensive. During the winter months, it wasn't appropriate to use the bathroom, as the pipes would freeze. Therefore, they were required to use the outhouse.
Shopped and dressed. The servants shopped every day for food by going to local markets. Since they lived off a major street, they used a horse and carriage to travel to further markets. However, they walked to close destinations. Mrs. Howard owned 6 dresses because they were time-consuming to wash and to iron. She dressed seasonally, adding multiple layers in the winter and fewer layers in the summer. She owned a sewing machine but did not make her own clothes because there were seamstresses that would do it for her.
Mr. and Mrs. Howard slept on a bed that was higher off the ground to keep it off the cold floor with a canopy on top to keep the heat in. There was also a dumb stove beside the bed for warmth on cold winter nights. The mattress consisted of separate layers of down feathers and horsehair with ropes underneath to hold them in place. Mrs. Howard developed Alzheimer's, so Mr. Howard designed a special room for her that went into the hallway, where there was a door with a lock so she couldn't escape outside into the cold and freeze. The children's rooms were much smaller and their beds were not elevated off the ground. The servants' bedrooms were downstairs with minimal windows and heating.
In order to keep warm, John Howard designed a central fireplace that acted as the primary heat distributor to other fireplaces in every room in the house. Wood was chopped seasonally and stored in the sunroom for fireplaces. Coal was also used in many rooms to start a fireplace. In order to adapt to colder seasons, the furniture configuration in the salon room is changed and positioned away from the window. Also, to keep warm, layers of clothing and blankets were added. Area rugs were added for warmth in every room during the colder seasons. Layers of window treatment such as curtains and drapery were added in order to regulate the temperature inside. In order to keep cool, John Howard designed huge windows that opened and incorporated French doors on the main floor that opened off the veranda. The furniture configuration in the saloon room is changed and positioned towards the French doors. In order to keep the house cool, windows can be opened all around the house, which creates a cross ventilation.
Mr. Howard designed a bathroom in the house, which was very unusual for this time period. The servants and guests did not use this bathroom. It was only used by Mr. and Mrs. Howard. Guests and servants either went to the washroom outside or in the chamber pots in the corners of the house. There were also bedpans that were kept under the bed. Guests would only stay for 20 minutes because it was considered rude to use the host's bathroom. They typically bathed in either a bathtub or took sponge bath. The water was heated manually with pots and everyone bathed using the same water, with the cleanest person bathing first and the dirtiest person bathing last. There was a basin in the bedroom that was filled daily with hot water by the servants for Mr. and Mrs. Howard to brush their teeth and shave.
Transportation was limited during this time period, and it was obvious who was wealthy and who wasn't. If you were wealthy, you got around on a horse and carriage. However, it was the most common to travel by foot. During the summer months, water transportation was available, but this quickly became difficult as winter rolled around and the lake froze. When guests came to the Colborne Lodge, they had a specific order of procession through the house, starting in the entrance, moving to the salon, and then to the dining room. The salon was located right off the front entrance off the house. The salon had the best furniture and paintings done by John Howard to make a good impression to the guests that the guests had of the house. Men entertained men in the dining room, following dinner to drink and smoke cigars, while the women left the dining room. A gaming room provided board games such as chess, as well as cards to entertain the men. The Howards worked about 6 days a week with Sundays off. The servants did a lot of the housework, including ice harvesting in the wintertime. They tended to work around the clock in order to cater to the Howards' needs. They got paid on a weekly basis. Mr. Howard, on the other hand, was an architect and built some of his own furniture, while Mrs. Howard did sewing and liked to read on her free time.
Most perishables were composted, and other garbage was usually taken down to the lake. For example, when horses died, the servants would bring the waste and the bodies onto the lake or onto the frozen ice when it was winter. As the ice melted, the garbage and the dead horses would simply sink to the bottom and rest there to decompose.
The 4 qualities of a sustainable building include lovable, flexibility, frugality, and durability. The building's lovable quality is connected to its surroundings related to nature, located near a main public transit route and the lake. Colborne Lodge is suitable to make any resident happy. It is heated from the core and all rooms branch off to the center, making the core an important aspect of the building. Flexibility lies in the architecture of the building. Windows were designed to double as doors and could open for ventilation during the summer. Furniture arrangements could be changed depending on the different seasons and could alter to the type of entertaining. It has 2 kitchens and a variety of bathrooms. Layers of window treatments were used to let in light and heat, as well as oil lamps for some interior lighting when the sun was not up. Frugality was an important element, although almost unnecessary. They made a lot of things even though they were wealthy, because he was an architect and she could sew. They did not heat areas that weren't used much. Instead, they tended to locate in warmer, more central areas where the space was warmer. Durability helped the Howards survive. Everything was made by hand with wood from the forest and surrounding stone. Rooms of high traffic or entrances had durable flooring like wood and laminate. The exterior was stucco, which gave the residents extra resistance to weathering.
In conclusion, Colborne Lodge existed in a time where sustainability was built into the lifestyle. The methods used can easily be applied for simple solutions for sustainability today.